Jealousy doesn't always arrive in obvious forms. It doesn't always come with glaring eyes or loud confrontation. More often, it creeps in through the quiet, almost invisible words, the subtle phrases wrapped in concern, disguised as casual remarks. It comes softly, but it hits hard. And if you don't learn to recognize the pattern, those words will begin to echo in your mind, slowly chipping away at your self-worth, one sentence at a time. You've probably heard them before, maybe recently, maybe all your life. You've changed. You're acting different. Don't forget where you came from. You think you're better than everyone now. These statements don't come from a place of truth. They don't arise from honest observation. They're reactions, defensive responses from people who feel threatened, not by your flaws, but by your growth. When a woman starts to evolve, everything around her is forced to confront itself. Her progress becomes a mirror. Her transformation shines light on what others have left in the dark, their unrealized dreams, their fear of failure, their own decision to settle, and instead of reflecting on themselves, they try to blur the mirror. That blur comes in the form of words, words designed to destabilize, to confuse, to manipulate your emotional compass. They say you're too much. What they mean is you're no longer easy to control. They say you've changed. What they mean is you're growing in ways I can't keep up with. They say you're not who you used to be. What they really mean is, I liked it better when you were smaller, quieter, more insecure. The most dangerous thing about these comments is that they can feel so personal, so intimate, because they often come from people close to you, friends, colleagues, even family. The ones who should understand you are sometimes the first to misunderstand your evolution. But their discomfort with your growth isn't your burden to carry. Their unease is not a signal for you to retreat. It's confirmation that you're stepping into your truth. See, when you begin to set boundaries, chase goals, speak with confidence, or walk with self-worth, it disturbs the dynamic that once made others feel superior, needed, or comfortable. And rather than adjust to your elevation, they try to pull you back down. But this is the crucial moment, the moment where your mindset will either expand or shrink. You can internalize their insecurity, or you can use it as a compass, guiding you deeper into your strength. You must learn to listen differently, hear not just the words being spoken, but the intention behind them. When someone questions your drive, ask yourself, are they protecting me or projecting on me? When someone doubts your ambition, are they genuinely concerned or are they just uncomfortable with your power? Jealousy speaks in code, but strong women learn to decode it. They learn that not every comment deserves a reaction, not every opinion is a truth, and not every voice deserves to live rent-free in your mind. The more you rise, the more you will hear these whispers, but instead of letting them plant doubt, let them confirm that you're doing something right. People don't throw stones at silence, they throw them at what shines. So hold your head high, keep growing, keep evolving, and never ever shrink yourself to comfort someone else's insecurity. Because every time they say you've changed, what they're really doing is admitting, I stayed the same, and that's not your responsibility, it's their reality. Jealousy wears many masks. It doesn't always show up as hostility or confrontation. More often it arrives dressed as concern, cloaked in politeness, disguised as friendly advice. And this is where it gets dangerous, because what appears helpful on the surface can underneath be deeply manipulative. When someone is jealous of your strength, your growth, or your momentum, they rarely confront you directly. Instead, they couch their envy in subtle, calculated language, designed to plant seeds of self-doubt in your mind. I'm just looking out for you. I just don't want you to get hurt. I'm saying this because I care. At first glance, these phrases might seem caring, even protective, but the real question you must learn to ask is, what are they protecting me from? Because often, it's not danger, failure, or harm. What they're really protecting is their comfort, their need to keep you in a box they understand, their need to stop you from stepping into something they feel they can't follow. It's not your future they're worried about, it's their relevance in it. When a woman begins to step into her power, whether it's in career, personal growth, self-confidence, or independence, she disrupts the status quo. She shifts the balance in relationships, in families, in social circles, and that shift can be uncomfortable for those who relied on your uncertainty, your dependence, or your silence. Growth demands change, but not everyone around you is ready for that change. And instead of dealing with their own stagnation, they try to slow your momentum. They do it by feeding you disguised discouragement. It might sound like, don't you think you're pushing too hard? Maybe you should take a step back. Not everything is about ambition. But when you decode it, what they're really saying is, you're evolving faster than I can process. I don't know where I fit if you become stronger. Your drive reminds me that I stopped chasing my own dreams. This is the hidden agenda of jealousy, to keep you second-guessing yourself, to cloud your instincts with their insecurity, to pull you back into the version of you that made them feel safe, superior, or needed. But their comfort should never come at the cost of your potential. Your growth is not a threat, it's a necessity. And if others can't walk with you as you rise, then they were never meant to journey with the woman you're becoming. You must learn to hear the difference between guidance and control. True support uplifts. It encourages your risks, believes in your capacity, and respects your decisions, even when they differ from its own. But jealousy masked as concern, that's a quiet form of sabotage. It wants you to shrink while pretending to protect you.
And here's the truth. You don't owe anyone comfort at the expense of your calling. You are not responsible for keeping others secure in your shadows while you were born to shine in your light. It's not arrogance to trust yourself. It's not rebellion to walk your own path. It's wisdom, it's power, and it's freedom. So when someone tries to disguise envy as care, look beyond their tone and into their intent. Listen for patterns. Notice how you feel after speaking to them, uplifted or uncertain, empowered or deflated. Your intuition will always tell you what their words are trying to hide. Trust it, and never ever let disguised jealousy derail your journey. Strength is silent. It doesn't need to announce itself, and it never begs for validation. It's felt in presence, in poise, in purpose. And when a woman begins to embody that kind of strength, it unsettles people, especially those who haven't yet come to terms with their own insecurities. Strength doesn't just elevate, it exposes. It holds up a mirror to those who are still hiding behind excuses, fear, or comfort. That's why a strong woman often becomes a target, not because she's doing something wrong, but because she reminds others of everything they're not doing. Insecure people are not triggered by your weakness, they're triggered by your stability. They're not rattled when you struggle. In fact, some even find comfort when you're uncertain, because it makes them feel needed, relevant, or superior. But the moment you begin to stand firm, to speak with clarity, to move with direction, that's when the shift happens. That's when the whispers begin. The subtle jabs, the criticism framed as casual comments, not because you've become a problem, but because you've stopped being easy to control. They'll call you intimidating. They'll say you're too direct. They'll label you difficult or cold. But those labels are not reflections of your character. They're reactions to your power. Power that no longer bends to their approval. Power that no longer conforms to their expectations. And to someone who depends on the old version of you, that power feels like rebellion. But here's the truth. A strong woman doesn't intimidate anyone. She simply refuses to be diminished. She doesn't shrink to be digestible. She doesn't water herself down to be palatable. She simply exists, fully, completely, without apology. And that fullness of presence threatens the insecure because it reveals how small they've allowed themselves to remain. It's important to understand that your strength will always be misunderstood by those who view confidence as arrogance. They don't see the years it took you to find your voice, the battles you had to fight within yourself to break free from silence. They don't know the cost of your clarity or the pain behind your peace. They just see the finished product and assume it came easy because they've never dared to do the inner work it takes to become whole. So when they question you, not with curiosity, but with criticism, recognize it for what it is, an emotional reaction to your evolution. You're not here to make others feel comfortable. You're not here to shrink, pause, or explain why you've grown. You don't have to apologize for becoming stronger than you used to be. That strength is your power, your right, and your responsibility. When a woman chooses to be strong, she automatically breaks the unspoken rules of how others expected her to behave. She is no longer the soft echo of someone else's voice. She becomes her own. And that, more than anything, disrupts the dynamics of those who prefer compliance over confidence. But disruption is necessary, because every time you stand firm in who you are, you give silent permission to every woman watching you to do the same. You become the blueprint for self-respect, the living example that it's okay to own your space, your standards, and your strength without guilt. So let them call you intimidating. Let them say you've changed. Let them whisper behind your back. It means you're evolving. And evolution never asks for permission. It only demands the courage to keep moving forward, even when the insecure try to pull you back. Envy doesn't always shout. It whispers in quiet corners behind your back, in conversations you were never meant to hear. But sometimes it's bold enough to speak to your face, dressed in subtle sarcasm, fake compliments, or uninvited criticism. And the most dangerous part, it often sounds like truth if you're not paying attention. You'll recognize it by the phrases that seem to follow your success. She just got lucky. She's not even that talented. She thinks she's all that now. She's only where she is because of someone else. None of these comments are about you. They're about the person speaking them. These statements are not critiques. They are confessions. They're confessions of someone's own insecurity, their unwillingness to grow, their fear of being left behind. And instead of taking responsibility for their own stagnation, they try to invalidate your elevation. They'd rather believe you didn't earn it than admit they didn't try hard enough to earn theirs. This is the language of envy, carefully designed to rob you of joy, to tarnish your wins, to make you second-guess the very things you've worked for. It's spoken not just by strangers, but sometimes by friends, co-workers, and even those who once rooted for you. Because when you grow beyond their expectations, they're forced to confront their own limitations. And instead of rising to meet you, they tear you down to stay comfortable. They'll say you're doing too much when you finally start going after your goals. They'll say you've changed when you start setting boundaries. They'll say you're lucky when you've worked tirelessly behind closed doors for years. They want to rewrite your story to make themselves feel better about not writing their own. But here's what you need to remember. People don't hate what they don't notice. They hate what reminds them of what they're not doing. Your drive reminds them of their delay. Your ambition confronts their avoidance. Your success exposes their excuses. So when someone tries to downplay your achievements, don't argue, don't explain, don't feel the need to justify what you've rightfully earned. You owe no one an explanation for your growth, your glow, or your greatness. The louder they speak against you, the more threatened they are by what you represent. A strong woman learns not to internalize these remarks. She learns to translate them. When someone says she's too confident, what they're really saying is, I wish I had that kind of courage. When they say she's full of herself, they mean she doesn't need my validation anymore, and that bothers me. It's not arrogance to believe in yourself. It's not ego to own your space. It's not pride to celebrate your accomplishments. These are the things strong women are often punished for, not because they're wrong, but because they stand out. Envy uses language as a weapon, but you don't have to be its target. You can turn every word they use against you into a wall of resilience. Let their bitterness become your boundary. Let their criticism fuel your clarity. Let their noise remind you that you're making moves worth noticing. The moment you begin to rise, you will attract both admiration and resentment. Some will clap for you, others will whisper. Let them, because if your presence can stir emotions in people who barely know you, or who once thought they knew the limits of your potential, then that's proof you're becoming exactly who you're meant to be. Everyone loves the light until they realize it comes from a fire they never had to build. People admire confidence, independence, and power from a distance, but when they see what it took to earn that strength, many turn bitter. They want your fire, the glow, the warmth, the energy, but they don't want your fight. They don't want the late nights, the silent tears, the relentless persistence. They want the outcome, not the effort. That's why jealousy so often comes from people who never witnessed your process. They see you now, refined, composed, focused, and they assume it came easy. They assume someone gave it to you, that you were handed the confidence you carry, or the success you now embody. But what they fail to see or refuse to acknowledge is the battle behind the brilliance, the climb behind the confidence, the fight behind the fire. Strong women are forged, not found. They are built in silence, in seasons of rejection, in moments when giving up would have been easier than going on. They are created through experience, not all of it beautiful, but all of it necessary. And when that strength finally shows, when it becomes visible and unshakable, it threatens those who never developed it. That's why some people get uncomfortable around you, not because you're aggressive, not because you're unkind, but because your presence highlights the fire they never dared to spark in themselves. Your energy unsettles their excuses. Your resilience confronts their complacency. And so rather than reflect inward, they project outward. They attack what they don't understand. They diminish what they secretly desire. It's easier to say you're too much than to admit they've settled for too little. It's easier to criticize your ambition than to reignite their own. So they aim for your character. They question your intentions. They make sly comments about how you've changed, all in an attempt to dim the flame they couldn't create themselves. But here's the truth. You didn't go through everything you did just to soften for someone else's comfort. You didn't rise from your setbacks just to make others feel less insecure. You didn't survive what tried to break you just to now explain why you're unbreakable. Your strength isn't up for debate. Your fire isn't up for negotiation. And your growth isn't up for permission. They want your courage, but not your scars. They want your voice, but not the silence it broke through. They want the version of you that shines, but without acknowledging the darkness you had to walk through. But that's their problem, not yours. Their unwillingness to see your full story doesn't make it any less real. It doesn't invalidate your fight or dim your fire. You've earned every ounce of your power. Every step of your journey, every hard choice, every moment you stood up when it would have been easier to stay down, it built something in you that can't be faked. And it's that authenticity, that raw, unfiltered strength that makes you shine. That's what makes you unforgettable. And that's also what makes you a target for those still hiding from their own truth. Let them talk. Let them question. Let them sit in the comfort of their denial while you walk in the fire of your truth. Because you weren't made to be understood by everyone. You were made to become unstoppable despite anyone. And the ones who matter, they'll respect the fire because they've fought their own battles too. The rest, they'll just keep staring, confused by the glow. One of the most liberating truths a strong woman learns is this: validation is not a requirement for value. Approval is not a prerequisite for progress. Strength does not wait for applause before it moves. It does not shrink in the absence of support. It does not dilute itself to win popularity contests. Because strength, real, cultivated, self-earned strength, learns to stand alone when necessary. The need to be liked, to be accepted, to be understood by everyone. It fades, not because you stop caring about people, but because you start caring more about your purpose. And when you're deeply aligned with your purpose, the opinions of those who don't understand your path start sounding like background noise. You begin to realize that not everyone clapping for you wants you to win, and not everyone criticizing you wants you to grow. Jealousy thrives in environments where approval is currency. That's why envious people will always try to manipulate how others see you. They'll distort your image, twist your intentions, and question your motives, not because you've done something wrong, but because they want to influence how the world reacts to your strength. If they can't control you, they'll try to control your reputation. And if that fails, they'll try to isolate you by making you feel like you've become too different or too distant. But strength knows better. Strength recognizes these tactics and doesn't flinch, because it no longer seeks comfort in consensus. It no longer trades authenticity for approval. It understands that the more you grow, the more misunderstood you'll be by those who never evolved past needing constant affirmation. You have to ask yourself, are you willing to be disliked in order to stay true to who you are? Are you willing to keep building when the crowd walks away? Are you willing to keep showing up fully and unapologetically, even when it threatens the insecurities of others? Because that's what strong women do. They don't shift with every opinion. They don't collapse under criticism. They don't water down their power to be more palatable. They show up fully, fiercely, and fearlessly. They are grounded not in who accepts them, but in who they have chosen to become. There's freedom in not needing permission. There's
There's power in walking into a room and not adjusting your energy to match the insecurity of others. There's strength in standing firm in your decisions, even when they make others uncomfortable. You're not here to be understood by everyone. You're here to become undeniable in your truth. Some people will dislike you simply because your confidence reminds them of their doubt. Others will distance themselves because your independence makes them feel unnecessary. And that's okay. That's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their readiness. You weren't born to live under the spotlight of someone else's approval. You were born to blaze a trail so bright it sets others free just by watching you walk it. That's why you must keep walking, with or without applause, with or without permission, with or without validation. Because the moment you stop seeking approval, you start attracting alignment. The moment you stop needing to be liked, you start becoming respected. And the moment you stop bending for acceptance, you start rising into your power, fully, finally, and forever. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every win needs to be posted. And not every step forward has to be announced. In a world addicted to visibility, true strength often moves in silence. The strongest women understand that their power isn't tied to attention. It's rooted in direction. Their growth is not for show. It's for impact. Jealous people feed on visibility. They track, compare, analyze, not to learn, but to measure how far behind they are. When you constantly expose your plans, your progress, or your next move, you invite not just admiration, but also interference. And often that interference doesn't come in the form of open resistance. It comes in whispers, in delays, in distraction, in passive sabotage. Silence becomes your protection. Privacy becomes your strategy. And progress, that becomes your language. When you no longer feel the need to prove your worth, your focus sharpens. You start living for your purpose, not for applause. You begin building for the long term, instead of chasing momentary validation. That's when your strength multiplies, not because you're hiding, but because you're choosing where your energy belongs. Strong women realize that they don't owe the world explanations for their elevation. Every lesson they've learned has cost them something. Time, tears, healing, failure. And when you've paid that kind of price, you guard your growth like a treasure. You protect it from energy that can't handle its value. That's why jealousy struggles in the face of quiet strength. When they can't monitor your moves, they can't mimic or mock them. When they don't know what you're doing, they can't distort or distract you. They become powerless in their attempts to pull you back because they no longer have access to the details of your journey. That's when your silence becomes your shield, not from fear but from unnecessary interference. There is unmatched power in walking away from noise, in learning to build quietly, in letting your results speak volumes where words are no longer needed. It's not about secrecy, it's about security. Because when something is truly valuable, you don't expose it to every wandering eye. You guard it, you nurture it, you protect it until it's ready to be revealed. Let your actions be louder than their assumptions. Let your consistency speak louder than their doubts. Let your evolution unfold without the burden of external commentary. Every strong woman reaches a point where silence feels more powerful than validation, because she's no longer trying to be seen. She's focused on becoming undeniable. In silence, you gain clarity. You begin to recognize who is genuinely rooting for you, and who is simply keeping score. You start to feel the difference between authentic support and performative praise. And most importantly, you begin to own your life on your terms, not for recognition, but for fulfillment. So stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Stop updating those who never clapped when you were struggling. Stop announcing to those who are only listening to measure, not to support. Instead, preserve your energy. Focus on what's real. Build in silence. Move in purpose. Let your legacy unfold louder than any comment ever could. Because silent success isn't small, it's sacred. And when your power comes from within, there's nothing they can say that can shake it. There comes a moment in every strong woman's life when she realizes peace has a price and boundaries are the currency. The decision to draw the line is rarely applauded by those who benefited from your lack of one. But it's essential, because strength without boundaries isn't empowerment, it's exhaustion. And the moment you begin to honor your limits, you automatically unsettle those who thrived on your availability. Jealousy is often masked by entitlement. People who once had unlimited access to your time, your energy, your compassion, they begin to resist when you reclaim your space, when you say no without guilt, when you walk away from draining conversations, when you stop showing up for people who never showed up for you. Suddenly, your strength becomes selfish, your boundaries become arrogant. But the truth is, they were only ever comfortable with you when you were sacrificing yourself for their comfort. A strong woman knows she cannot serve from depletion. She cannot rise while constantly being pulled down by emotional leeches who mistake kindness for permission. So, she learns to choose herself, not because she doesn't care, but because she's finally learned to care for herself first. She knows that setting a boundary is not cruelty, it's clarity. And clarity doesn't apologize for what it protects. Weak people will always be threatened by boundaries because boundaries confront their behavior. They can no longer manipulate your time, play on your empathy, or invade your energy without consequence. They lose control, and when insecure people lose control, they often respond with slander, blame, or isolation. But strength doesn't bend to noise. It recognizes that distance is sometimes the only way to protect your dignity. you'll hear phrases like, "You've changed. You think you're better than us. You're not as nice as you used to be." These are not observations. These are manipulations. They're spoken by those who mourn the version of you that lacked boundaries, the version that tolerated disrespect, the version that kept giving and giving until there was nothing left. That version was easier for them to exploit, not love. And when you evolve beyond that version, you lose people. But what you lose in approval, you gain in peace. You begin to attract the kind of energy that respects your space, that honors your presence, that doesn't question your no and doesn't punish your independence. And more importantly, you stop carrying the weight of everyone else's emotions while abandoning your own. Boundaries are the armor of a strong woman, not walls to keep everyone out, but filters to protect what gets in. Not everyone deserves access. Not everyone earns presence. Not everyone has the capacity to hold space for your growth. And that's okay. You're not here to convince people of your worth. You're here to protect it. So say no unapologetically. Walk away confidently. Detach gracefully. Not with anger, but with wisdom. Because every boundary you set is a declaration. I will no longer bleed for people who wouldn't even hand me a bandage. There is power in limits. There is freedom in detachment. There is beauty in choosing peace over performance. And once you understand that, once you truly internalize the fact that your worth doesn't depend on your willingness to be used, you become untouchable. Not because no one tries to cross the line, but because they learn quickly that the woman standing behind it is no longer the one who tolerated everything before it.
As you rise, expect resistance. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because you're doing what many won't dare to do. You're growing. You're choosing discipline over distraction, clarity over chaos, purpose over people-pleasing. And while that should inspire others, it often offends them, because your elevation confronts their stagnation. Your evolution exposes their excuses. Your focus reveals their aimlessness. You'll notice it in their words, their silence, their energy. People who once praised your dreams will grow quiet as they begin to materialize. They'll question your priorities when you start protecting your time. They'll downplay your success when it begins to distance you from their comfort zone. What they once supported, they'll now resent, not because you've changed for the worse, but because you've changed without needing their permission. Envious people take your elevation personally, as if your progress is a direct attack on their identity. But it isn't. Your journey has nothing to do with their insecurity. They've just chosen to interpret your rise as their rejection. And when someone feels left behind, their instinct is often to criticize what they don't understand, instead of confronting why they didn't move. You're not responsible for how your growth makes others feel. You're not obligated to slow down so others feel comfortable with your pace. You don't have to apologize for being what they never believed you could be. Your rise is not arrogance. It's not betrayal. It's not ego. It's alignment. It's the result of staying consistent in a world that thrives on distraction. It's the reward for showing up when no one was watching. It's the outcome of doing the inner work that most people avoid. So yes, your elevation will offend them, and you need to let it. Let it remind them that evolution is a choice. Let it challenge their narratives. Let it disturb the false comfort of their complacency. Because you didn't sacrifice your old self, endure setbacks, and rebuild from the ashes just to stop short of your potential because someone else got uncomfortable. You see, strong women aren't afraid to make others uncomfortable, not intentionally, but inevitably. Their presence demands integrity. Their focus demands respect. Their boundaries demand accountability. And people who don't want to grow will always be unsettled by someone who does. That's not cruelty. That's clarity. And clarity always divides. It separates the inspired from the insecure, the focused from the fearful, the courageous from the complacent. Let them misunderstand you. Let them twist your motives. Let them create their own stories about your success. It doesn't change the truth. It doesn't lessen your impact. It doesn't stop your momentum, because you are not here to manage perceptions. You are here to embody purpose. Those who are meant to elevate with you will never be offended by your growth. They'll be motivated by it. They won't question your boundaries. They'll admire your standards. They won't shrink in your presence. They'll rise with you. These are your people. These are your mirrors, your tribe, your proof that evolution doesn't have to mean isolation, but sometimes isolation is the first step toward discovering who truly aligns with your becoming. And as you continue to grow, always remember, those who get offended by your shine were never going to survive your storm. You don't need their approval. You never did. Your life is your message, and your growth, your elevation, your resilience, it speaks louder than any explanation ever could. This is your moment. The world will keep talking. Let them. The jealous will keep whispering. Let them. The insecure will keep watching. Let them. Because none of it matters more than the truth you live in. And the truth is this: you were not made to shrink. You were not made to blend in, to be quiet, to settle for a life that makes others feel more comfortable while you feel less fulfilled. You were made to rise, boldly, unapologetically, fully. Every jealous comment you've heard was a sign of intimidation masked as critique.
Every time someone tried to downplay your ambition, what they were really doing was revealing the ceiling they'd already set for themselves. But you don't live under ceilings, you break them. You don't play small, you expand. You don't ask for space, you take your place because you've earned it. And no amount of envy, gossip, shade, or subtle sabotage can erase the fire that's been forged inside of you. So what now? Now you go even harder. You stop explaining your glow to people who are committed to sitting in the dark. You stop apologizing for the light you carry and the boundaries you've built. You stop softening your tone just to be tolerated by those who would never celebrate you anyway. You reclaim every piece of your power, your voice, your time, your energy, your vision. You own your story, the chaos and the calm, the setbacks and the success, every part of it, because all of it made you who you are. And if that version of you threatens them, let it. If it offends their comfort, let it. If it makes them turn away, good. Because where you're going, you only need those who are ready to rise with you. No more justifying your strength. No more second-guessing your worth. No more dimming your light to be accepted in rooms you've outgrown. You've been playing it small for far too long, and even then they were still uncomfortable. So imagine what happens when you stop hiding. Imagine what you'll attract when you show up fully. Imagine the doors that will open when you stop knocking on the wrong ones. The world needs strong women who are done being silent, who are done asking, who are done compromising. It needs women who are ready to lead, to build, to protect, to speak, to shine. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, then let them sit in that discomfort. That's their work to do, not yours. You were not made to be liked by everyone. You were made to live a life that honors your truth, and the only permission you'll ever need is your own. So if you're reading this, this is your signal. Stop holding back. Stop giving your power away to the noise. Stop letting the whispers of the jealous dictate the volume of your purpose. Stand taller, speak louder, rise higher, not because the world is ready, but because you are. And from this moment forward, let the only approval you chase be from the woman in the mirror. She knows who you are, she knows what you've survived, and she knows it's your time now.